So I'm gonna, there we go. Okay, so I was gonna say that the application to leaving your eyes open in this is in reference to something that I think was discussed last week, that it can be easy to sit completely silent and still with your eyes closed and to access effortless awareness. But then when you go out in the world, it feels harder to do that. So one sort of step would be doing this with your eyes open, if you want. So like we did before, just noticing how effortless it is to register what is coming up in your experience. If I am sensing, if I am seeing, if I am touching, that's physical. But if I am aware, if I am simply aware, that's like a layer back. So just being aware of whatever's coming up in the experience. And sound is usually a really good place to start, because that's in the ether element, the least substantial of the 5 elements according to Ayurveda. So we can start with sound and then notice, just be aware of light. For a moment, just tuning into how effortless it is simply to register this, and notice what comes up into this space of effortlessness. Notice the quality of it. Notice the impact on the experience of any of these sort of effortful happenings. And now we're going to get a little curious about these effortful happenings. In the relative, as the character, what am I avoiding feeling? These thoughts that are arising into this effortless space, they don't need to be there. That's not my natural state. So when they're coming up, why are they there? What am I avoiding feeling with these thoughts? What is the effort trying to achieve? As you're ready, start start coming back. Danny and I had a moment. Go ahead, Don. You're muted. I think I can unmute.
Oh, am I on mute? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Well, I think well, I mean, I think that the effort is like it comes from like the miss. There really isn't any effort. It comes from, it seemed, just looking at like, okay, if I think I'm doing well, that's going back to thinking I'm like a doer, and that's like the whole mind story. So, no, I think the whole effort thing is, I feel like it's almost like a not real. Like it feels like I can play the effort game, but um it's I'm kidding myself if I actually think I'm putting forth effort.
Yeah, right. The experience of effort comes from buying into.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Danny wants to wait for a minute and then. Brent, did you have anything come up?
I don't know. I struggled with that one a little bit. I don't know why. I just
I left it really open.
yeah, no, a lot of thoughts coming in. But yeah, I don't know. Some reason I just couldn't. I'm tracking with what Don said for sure. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there wasn't, I was disconnected somewhere. Sorry, I wish I could add more to
Oh,
that,
you're
but
fine.
okay.
You ready, Danny? Or I can talk for a little bit.
Uh, okay. My brain just exploded. The question was, I I don't know. I don't know if I even understood the question. There was just
It could be seen, it could be seen sort of koan like a unanswerable question, kind of like how Don unanswered it. But it's also a potential sort of self-inquiry question where it's kind of like in this moment where effortlessness can just be, if something is disturbing that, it's in service to the illusory self. What is that? What are these thoughts that are coming up? So if it's coming up, what do I have to do tomorrow? Blah, blah, blah. We could say there is a fear. There's a fear that I won't take care of it when the time comes. Something like that. There is a belief that the mind is going to take care ahead of time of what awareness is fully capable of handling in the moment. Or you're reflecting on the past, on an argument that already happened that's gone, that wouldn't exist anymore, except that you're still thinking about it. In which case, there's still some kind of identity attachment to this past thing. And there's this idea that it can somehow be fixed by how you talk to yourself about it, which is to say, this illusory self is trying to preserve or bolster itself. We suppress our emotions. We learn to do that early in life. And this is what gives these thoughts this charge. That's what is still playing itself out, is this trapped energy stuff in the experience. And my awareness, the awareness of me, just placed on that without additional fuel, starts to dismantle it. So this is a kind of sideways approach to that, to letting feelings come up that haven't been felt.
So I could say I then maybe I did get it because because what you just said, the way you just described it, is exactly what was going on. And the thing that came to me was, damn it. I mean, it's like these things either come in a way that's telling me that I'm the greatest thing, that ever existed, or that I'm the biggest loser, piece of dirt that, it's one extreme or the other. It's weird. I was thinking, God, why can't it just be something that's like, hey, this is great, que sera, sera, but no, man, it's like some weird, wild, extreme thing. So there's something that is there that um that probably is suppressed, that I'm not or that I haven't come to terms with there relative to identity.
And aren't
And
they two sides of the same coin?
yeah,
I'm amazing, I'm awful, or
yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah, yeah.
The one's just trying to protect against the feeling of the other thing,
Sometimes I worry that I'm going to open a door that is going to, I think, this has happened. I'm not saying it's happening right now, but that is just going to explode. Not the way that Danny was referring to, but in a more emotional thing. Because I can be, I can just be fine, and then all of a sudden I can get pretty emotional about something that happens. If I see, some sad commercial on TV or whatever, I'll just burst into tears. And I'm like, where'd that come from?
you know.
And yeah, so I don't know.
That's great, actually. With the capacity to feel sadness comes the capacity to feel happiness or joy. So that's kind of open-heartedness. Accepting that happens would then be the way to go with that. So that when that happens, there's nothing wrong with it. And that's kind of the whole essence of what people are calling enlightenment anyway. This enlightenment that you already are would be existing as though nothing is wrong or right with you.
Doesn't even make sense to use words. It's so I hear you talking, but the question you asked before really exploded my brain. I don't know. I can hear you. I can see you. I can hear you talking, but it doesn't make any sense.
Danny, have you looked up Kundalini symptoms?
No.
Okay, let's talk about that later.
Okay. Ah,
So you just get to be with whatever comes up.
Rub some of that off on me, Danny.
Oh, it's happening now. It rubbed off on me. I was muted and your eyes were closed, but we were both laughing. Don, would you like to talk about your follow-up experience to last time? And I can explain what that is.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Is my mic okay? Well, so the last time you were saying like you were kind of challenging us and saying like you're enlightened already. What if I when I say that, or when teachers say that, what comes up for you, And so so there's like lots of like follow I was like kind of real, digging into that, and the same like, so then Heather, you sent back to me something that I've read in, Nisargadatta's I Am That a bunch of times. The student goes to the teacher and says, he goes to Nisargadatta and he says, I'm coming to you. You're not coming to me. And Nisargadatta has a really great response, but that's essentially my question. Like, I'm coming to you, Heather. You're not coming to me. There must be there's some difference between us. And so I was trying to get at that. And the idea of like, the koshas, I'm not sure if everyone knows about I think you explained the koshas or whatever, but it's like, there's
Yeah.
the most subtle layers of the kosha. The subtlest layer is just like bliss, and then slightly less subtle would be wisdom, and then mind is kind of grosser, And so I thought, oh, I know the difference is between Heather and myself. Heather can she has ready access to the subtle bliss level of layer of kosha, whereas I don't. I cannot access that layer right now. And I was like, I've got it. That's it. That's the difference. And I'm typing out my email to Heather saying, this is it. And it just suddenly occurred to me what's going on. Like I could just see, like, okay, I've got this whole story going on. There's this whole mental layer about how reality is, and Heather and myself and the koshas, and how I figured it out. And then it was like, well, can I really, am I really not able to, like, it occurred to me the thing that's blocking
Oh,
the
okay.
whole thing.
Hold on. I
So,
need you to
okay.
rewind like 10 seconds and say that again. You froze.
Oh, so let's see. So I'm not sure where I froze up. As I was typing the email, it occurred to me that my fixation on not being able to access the bliss layer is the thing blocking the access to the bliss layer. So it's just like this, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I was stuck at this conceptual layer. So it's basically just dropping that whole thing, because that is the block. So like mid email, it was just like, well, maybe if I just drop that, and it's, well, duh, that's the whole thing. Yeah,
Well,
I
duh.
really had it all figured out. I'm sure, mind has come back since then, but then I was temporarily like, okay, I was writing this email and it was like my questions all vanished mid email. So
That's an excellent representation of what this is, and what it is in my experience too. And I've done it so many times that now I know, even when I'm stuck, I know because I've done it hundreds of times. Oh, wait, no, it's not there. I've tricked myself, or this was a one-time thing, and now I have to do all this work. But it's just a thought.
yeah, but I think, yeah, the other thing is like, it's almost like, and then there was the other piece that we had a few emails, and you wrote me back that was like, the mind, I'm aware of a layer of existence called mind, and when I put my attention on it, there's contraction. And I think it was basically like that. And it's kind of like, yeah, like the mind is, uh it's basically like knowing makes it contract, and not knowing releases it. So it's kind of like, uh it's almost like, the more solid, the more we're certain, then the mind is tightly contracted. And we can use it when we're driving. We need the mind to be tightly contracted to be certain of navigating and not wrecking the car. And that's not a way to live, and then it seems like, in order to get past the mind, you basically have to be open-minded, which is like it's like a not knowing, so it feels like a not knowing.
And yet it makes space for the sort of conduit between me and the divine. That's where that wisdom layer, that's how it works. You basically have to remove the experience of obscuring by the mind.
That's what you just said, Don. That's like the loop, I think, that catches so many people, right? Because my question last week was, how do I sort of stay in a place? And Heather's answer was, well, you're there, kind of, and I'm like, well, why am I, if I'm there, why am I asking the question? There's the loop, and it's like, I sat back and you think about it, and it frustrates you when you hear that back, but that's exactly what you need to hear. I mean, it's exactly what this needs to hear. There it is. There's the mind. You think that you're not that. Yeah, it's
The
a
whole
loop that is
premise,
just like,
the whole premise of this is sort of the wrong direction. So it is gonna result in a lot of like hard to hear information toward yourself. You're doing this whole thing wrong. You've been doing this whole thing wrong the whole time, but you're also perfect right now. That's the truth.
That's also what I said in my email to you this
You
week.
just all be in one ear.
I didn't want to hear some things.
Oh yeah, Danny got mad at me.
Yeah.
I can't figure out my temperature, so I'm just switching, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, no, yeah. I can relate to all that. And also what Don said, you said some minutes ago, what did you say? Something like not knowing?
About it, open mind.
Yeah, no knowledge, not knowing. Yeah, and that's it. And then, yeah.
I sent Don a little screenshot of a dialogue with Nisargadatta, and that was one of the things he said. The difference between you and me is that I know less than you.
And the mind doesn't understand that.
You have a survival flavored thing that says, I need to know more. I need to keep knowing more. And that's how seeking ends up. That's the form that seeking ends up taking, is knowing more. And you can see that in like online forums, like, well, no, you've gotten this conceptually wrong. Here's, so we're ending up playing this game of knowing more. Don?
Oh yeah, and then with the knowing, it's just interesting that there were a few things that came up that were like, aha, just like a few Christian, I don't know, like some people, the Christian background, there's like, I think, not that I really do, but one of the things like Christ is like, you have to become as little children. And that's kind of like points to it. Like, no, like children don't know, but it's a very, children are open-minded. And then the other thing, the story of the Garden of Eden, they eat from the tree of knowledge. And then they no longer experience the bliss of Eden, so it's like, it's the knowing takes you away from the bliss state.
Yeah. My mind is like an idiot. It's so empty. That's the Tao. Or something like that. I'm like an idiot. My mind is so empty, I think. It's kind of scary. at first, to not have any thoughts going on, or to have the thoughts go on and not believe them, every single one after the other. At first, it's like, what, how do I do anything? How does life go now? But you've done this before as a child.
Yeah, there was a really, again, Nisargadatta, someone asked him about my life. He's like, I don't pay much attention to it. He's like, I treat it like my digestion. I don't pay much attention to it.
Yeah. I posted a video about that a couple weeks ago because we start to even worry about our digestion, right? Like we even get in there like, let me make sure that like something seems wrong according to mind, and I'm gonna fix how this body's functioning. And then what are we doing? We're placing our attention, our fixation on something that perfectly functions on its own. So even that we obscure. Along with this is just a thought that I had during a one-on-one session, or a reflection that we came to together, which was, for the person, what if this is as good as it gets, or as far as it goes? Or another way to say this is, what if in this lifetime there is no, let's say, outward reflection of my innate enlightenment? Because a lot of us, we've invested a lot of time, and now maybe there's this spiritual ego that says, well, now I don't have to be smart or successful, but I do need to attain enlightenment within this lifetime for it to have been worth anything at all. But what if that's not true? What if it doesn't matter? And I'm going to, isn't it the person? Isn't it the person that says, I need to be enlightened? And what if your role in this experience is peripheral to the awakening in the experience of another? I'll back up another layer. What if this whole thing is always meant to have been collective, and you're worried about this one when you're already serving a function in the collective awakening? Why does the person have to reflect this experience? It can be a really helpful question for somebody who's approaching the age of 80 or something, and they've been seeking for 45 years, and they're starting to get this sense of despair. I've spent my whole life on this. What if it doesn't happen?
I'm not 80, but I have a feeling I'm closer than anybody else here. I have not been on this path for maybe as long as some others, but I've asked myself that very question. And where I'm at, it was a quick answer, really. I mean, whether or not there's the outward manifestation that my mind may tell me it should look like, or that I see in someone else or whatever, we're all one anyway, right? So if it's someone else that gets enlightened, that's me getting enlightened. And I am so tired of the suffering that comes from me with this that whether I exude anything out, I know that when I'm aware and when I'm operating in that, call it, I'm a lot happier, whatever you want to call it. I just, that's good enough. It really doesn't matter, I'll start to quantify this, but it's probably a question I think people do have to actually, it's really good to ask.
Because isn't that the freedom that you've been looking for?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So why,
Yeah. Cause yeah,
what else
I mean,
needs to happen, you know?
people are either going to be, they're either going to be um, suffering because they don't have, or what they don't realize that there's others that are suffering because they have, and they thought that was it, and it realized it didn't. And it's on both ends of the spectrum, just like I was saying, I'm everything, I'm nothing. Um, Same thing, suffering.
This is where this idea of letting go of the search is actually strategic. Surrender, letting go, all these things. It feels like giving up on life. It seems counter to mind's conditioning. It seems like nothing's going to happen. I'm just going to end up letting go of this seeking thing, which means that I'll stagnate and I'll just forget about this. Mind will take over. But surrender is all encompassing. It doesn't just mean you give up looking at things in books and watching videos. It's sort of contagious to every other part of your life. It's the back door to just becoming like a child again, like Don said. If you could talk to a 2-year-old who hasn't taken on any conditioning yet, they would tell you, I don't need anything. You're not going to tell me anything. It's how you came in.
Well, the other thing that the other concept that I was kind of popping up for me last week, I had watched a Wile E. Coyote cartoon with my daughter, and it was so funny seeing Wiley. I mean, you know, that just seemed like such an clear analogy for the mind. Wiley trying to catch the Roadrunner, because it's, you know, I mean it's clearly anytime the mind's trying to do anything. Oh, I want to, whatever it is, get enlightened. That's it's Wiley again, and it's never gonna happen. So, but you can do it. You can see it and be entertained by it, just like Wiley's funny to watch.
As long as you know it's not true.
And unless you're in suffering, that's when it's not funny. So
The whole thing's about attention. Nothing has to change about the mind. How easy, how amazing.
It was about the term enlightenment, awakening. Everybody uses another term, or they're all self-realization and this non-duality, awareness, consciousness. All these terms point to the same thing. It's not a thing, it's not a state, but they're all the same yeah, names, just names for this.
Yeah, they're not the same, at least not the way that I've learned them. It would be cool if there was one central like glossary that everybody used, but teachers do use different words for things.
Mm.
I think last time I started to get into this, maybe that's what prompted the question, but self-realization is not like, it doesn't involve anything mystical or magical or anything. It is making real to yourself. And once that has happened, and that is beyond concepts, it's beyond any kind of process. Nothing happens. You know. And I don't mean in the mind. And then awakening is what we might call more of a journey or a process, which might include events and ups and downs, things like that. Enlightenment, I don't care about the word enlightenment anymore. I just feel like it's real. It's so often not describing what it actually is, that I think it's a bit of an obstacle because I think it gets used as a kind of destination. You're already that. You just have to realize that you are already that. That is enlightenment, is realizing you're already enlightened. It's that subtle, that sort of uneventful. And when you realize that you already are that, then your experience starts to reflect it. And so then you look enlightened, act enlightened, or whatever.
Our true nature, awareness, consciousness, everybody uses another term, but they're all pointing to this, that we are.
Yes, but these terms do get used differently. There was a book that was I listened to the audiobook a bunch of times. And if I were to go back now and listen to that audiobook, I would be taking a lot of notes and taking a lot of issue, which is a weird thing because it's still so valuable and wonderful. But one of the things is that it did put all of these things into one, like, oh, it's called this, it's called this, it's called this. There are distinctions with these words.
So forget all these words. Sorry, yeah, forget all these words and we're done.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. When there's the feeling that I'm getting somewhere, but I need to understand where I'm getting, there's this wanting to put structure around these experiences or this knowing and these kinds of things. So there's this sense at the time that it's important to intellectually take on these things. And this tricks a lot of people because they say, I'm not retaining this. I'm not smart enough to do this. I mean, I want to, but I'm not smart enough or intellectually capable enough. But these things don't matter. They end up being everything that you throw into a box and dump off the cliff. So, yeah.
Okay.
Done.
Oh yeah, I was just pointing out like what happened to me during the email was almost like entirely negative. Like it was like it's not like I thought, oh, I am enlightened, because that seems a little bit conceptual. It was just dropping the concept that I'm not enlightened. And then there's just no concept, which is great.
Yeah. So just an example of two different teachers talking about this in very different ways, and ways that if we listen to one teacher and the other, and we do this with an open mind, we can really get somewhere. Eckhart Tolle talks about presence, and he talks about it almost in percentages, like how present are you and how often? And there's not really some destination of 100%. It's just, this is just how you live now. With this idea of, okay, I'm going to place more attention into my inner energy body, is what he would say. And then when the pain body asserts itself, I'll just pay attention to that. So it's just acceptance and attention. Another way of talking about this would be David Bingham, who is very minimal, and I like him, and he's the one I was listening to when there was self-realization. And he talks about it as non-conceptual awareness. I don't know that he really talks about enlightenment, and that wasn't really a focus for me either. So non-conceptual awareness, understanding that that is you, is self-realization. So this effortless place that we've been sort of accessing, that we can see the distinction between one mode and the other, simply recognizing that the other mode is you. That's it. That's self-realization. And then once that is clear to you in your cells, beyond a doubt, then your experience has to follow that knowing. Because what you believe becomes relatively true. That's your power. So once I believe, once I know that I am non-conceptual awareness, all concepts now have to be brought up to be dismantled or to be now declined. And that's two very different ways of talking about ultimately the same thing. And there are lots of other ways. So I don't know that any teacher, I don't know if we can say that any teacher is 100% right. And ultimately you are your teacher. So you have to take all of this, take it in, and be a scientist. You have to completely do the science of, do I know beyond a doubt that this is true? That this is true, everything that comes up. And it just keeps falling away. I think that Kundalini kicked in for me maybe a really long time before there was ever self-realization. The reason that it did was that my idea of myself was completely shaken. So I didn't know, let's say, know the truth. But I was learning very quickly so much about what wasn't true that I thought was true. And it created this energetic, I don't know, reversal of polarization. I'm not sure that that's the exact right way to say that, but the illusory structures of contraction couldn't hold anymore.
So you didn't do any practice, especially for Kundalini awakening, it just happened? Yeah. Okay.
I was not prepared. I don't think I knew what it was for maybe like, if it happened, I'm pretty sure 20 years ago, then I didn't know how to deal with it for maybe 16 or 17 years. Am I still in a separate self mode when I notice my thoughts, feelings? The watcher is still a separate self. Can you help me understand this question a little bit better by expanding? Are you asking if ultimately there is even a watcher?
Yeah. Is this observer or watcher that sees these thoughts? is this also a separate self, or is this awareness itself, or I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I know what you mean. I want to see if you know what you mean, because I think you do. I mean, I think you know the answer. Or I can just talk. I don't want to put you on the spot. You want me to talk?
I mute and you can talk. I don't
Okay.
have any words.
Yeah, there's ultimately no observer either. It's a concept that we're placing on this, and it still has this idea of an identity. Maybe I said this last week, or I can't remember, but the idea of self-realization is in itself also a misunderstanding. I mean, that term isn't perfect. What self? So when we sit with self-inquiry, we're doing who am I? And then we're doing what am I? Where am I? All of this is going to result in nobody, nothing, nowhere. So even this self that I'm aspiring to realize is no thing. That's how little this actually matters. And how much freedom you already have. It's funny, huh? I wish there could be this sort of flow chart. Actually, maybe I'll try and make one. Just this flow chart, like full of caveats for everything you could ever realize. Oh, so you've realized this? Okay, but wait, ask yourself this question. Because it could just, I mean, maybe that would be very jarring, I don't know, but it would seeing how many layers of obstruction there are between the current experience and reality, it would just, let the whole thing go. You're just like dragging around this backpack full of rocks. Why is it so heavy? Done.
Oh, I was just giving thumbs up on the flow chart. I think that would be
Oh,
great.
I'll see. It might be just put me too much in mind, so I get
But
in the way.
that is really subtle. I mean, because it's like, okay, okay, maybe we've given up the idea that we're, this limited person, but then it's like, okay, then yeah, okay, then I'm pure awareness to, that's if that's still a subtle concept, but it's like a very subtle concept. It's like the last concept or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It would have to be one of the last for sure. So this thing that we're approaching is also potentially the scariest thing for a lot of us. Maybe Danny had a hint of that last week. I don't know. If you have had the experience of the void, of just nothing, absolutely nothing, that can feel to two different experiences, completely liberating from just the first time or terrifying. Because there's this idea that without content, without something happening, without me being something, that there's no meaning and that that's bad. I felt very terrified and sort of depressed when I started looking into emptiness in Buddhism for the same reason. So as you start to approach less thought, and then perhaps when your eyes are closed in meditation, or maybe just randomly, there's just nothing. Nothing can be registered. There is no experience. Has anyone not experienced this? Yeah. Did it feel good? Or was there a kind of, yeah. For a lot of people, there can be a glimpse of that, maybe when they don't even want it to happen. And then for the rest of their experience, there's just an active avoidance of that ever happening again. Behind it all also is love. Love filtered through misunderstanding. Something is trying to protect itself, make something of itself, make itself bigger or smaller. Isn't that love? Okay, done. Thank you for your applause.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was the wrong. I showed you a
I
hammer
was like,
raise button.
okay, cool, it resonated.
But applause as well. Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like this is really helpful, like having compassion for especially people who commit horrendous acts, and it's a real stretch to say, oh, that was done out of love, but ultimately it was.
I think that's self-realization doesn't require that we do that kind of work, but once there is self-realization in the experience, then that kind of work follows. And in order to be able to experience something like unity consciousness or I am consciousness, whatever, we kind of have to do that work for more than just a glimpse of it. Because the walls have to come down between me and you could be anybody. And there are plenty of anybody's who, based on the conditioning of this mind, it may seem difficult to sort of extend that olive branch.